quote you some of this stuff because Conrad's into it, Marlowe's into it. Britain is the land of liberty, and the point of liberty is that it wants to expand. That's the direction of history, and we need to move history along. We need to be on the side of history. History is the wind at our backs. That's the story. That's this imperial. That's this sort of version, and it's a very deep notion. You believe somehow, and is that all right? Let's. Can I leave it at that? The difference in intrinsic, because we got to go to the Congo. There's so much interesting stuff to talk about. Okay, so we did the empire, and let's look at the Congo. How did Leopold get the Congo? So let me just briefly, it's a sort of remarkable story. It's sort of a classic story of empire, in some sense, if you will, of the perversion of knowledge, or the power of knowledge gathering, on the one hand, and also of the persuasiveness of a particular vision of progress and uplift. Both of these, knowledge on the one hand and uplift on the other, in the hands of a unscrupulous, possibly cynical person in power, viz. King Leopold. So this just shows you a map of what Leopold ended up getting in 1884. And I mean, I told you, here's a more detailed map of it. Just to give you, this is 905,000 square miles. I looked up what the United States is 3,600,000 square miles. So this is just about a quarter of this country. That's a lot as someone's personal property. And it really was his personal property in ways that you'll see. So we're talking now about this. This is what we're talking about, and this is an older map of it. Let me leave this map up and give you the backstory. So in 1878, King Leopold founds what's called the International African Association. Various European governments are interested in this because no one has actually been in the Congo, to tell you the truth. They've only been right here at the tip of it. There's a Portuguese colony here, but basically very little exploration in the Congo. So this African Association sends in a group of explorers who end up making treaties with many of these African chieftains they meet, treaties of the sort that you read about in the Williams. Remember, Williams has that opening section where he talks about these people having batteries in their hands and shaking the hands of an African chief and saying, the guy thinks he's amazingly strong, and then plying him with some cottons and other things and giving him some gin, and the guy signs away at something. Well, that's what happened. These people went in there, made all these treaties with all these different people who clearly hadn't a clue of what a treaty was or what they're giving away, and probably didn't understand what was being said to them. And these people came back with a bunch of treaties. We got this, and we got that, and we got the other. So the early 1880s, a bunch of different explorers and different private citizens, many of them representing Leopold, came back with saying, we got these various lands. Now, Leopold in the early 1880s then had this notion that the Europeans should consolidate these various treaties, and they should consolidate under his stewardship. His stewardship, why did he have a claim? Because he was a great anti-slavery activist, that's what he said. He was, in some strange way. The Portuguese were actually engaged in the slave trade in the Congo, and he thought he could convince other European powers that he should be involved, that he should be allowed to consolidate these different treaty areas. The British and the French were also, and the Germans were rivaling one another in trying to get more explorers into this area to sign more of these kind of treaties. And so at this conference, and let me see, we get the 18. We have a slide of the. We don't have a slide of the Berlin Congress. So in 1884, these gentlemen representing 14 nations got together in Berlin. It's 1884. And what they did was they consolidated all these individual treaties and expanded them. And they said, okay, we now create something called a Portuguese Free State. I'm sorry, the Congo Free State. The reason I said Portugal. Portugal got a little bit of this too. They got a little tiny part of the Congo. But basically, Leopold is sort of given this part of the world in return for allowing other Europeans, all Europeans, to trade there. So it's no tariffs, open free trade on the one hand. and that he's going to suppress the Portuguese slave trade. So he gets in there under the interests of humanitarianism and human rights, if you will, and free trade and liberty. Now, what happened at almost the same time, maybe just a little bit later, is a boom in the world demand for rubber. First, there's a technological change. There's the vulcanization of rubber, the new processes which make it possible to process latex to keep it soft, the rubber we know about it. And then new demands, insulation for telegraph wires, hoses on equipment, insulation, tires, wagon tires, bicycle tires, and so forth. So there's a world rubber boom at the same time as this rubber in Brazil, but at the same time this vast expanse of rubber trees becomes available to Europeans. It's a really horrible crop to harvest in the best of times. In those days, it was done that basically you had at least the Congo version of the rubber tree. The guys, you cut into the rubber tree, and the latex spills out, and the latex gets on the body of the worker, and then it dries, and then it has to be then it's sort of peeled off the worker. So it's kind of gruesome, and it's painful. Hair sticks. So it's a horrible trade in and of itself, and brutal, and kills people. But furthermore, it's done with isolated guys in the jungle. So it's actually very hard, from the point of view of the employer, to control labor. Right? These are not people working in a field that you can watch. So to enforce labor in this system, these horrible and increasingly violent strategies that you read about come into being. So that's the story, and that's the origins of the scandal. Is the point here. So now we have how Leopold gets it, and we know what he wants in the Congo. Now what is called the scandal of the Congo. And so what I was hoping to do, and this is the first picture in this, what I was hoping to do now is to talk to you a little bit about the three texts we have about the scandal of the Congo. So the first text is the text by Joseph Conrad, which I think many of you had read before. As Conrad says about this, the heart of darkness is experience, push a little and only very little beyond the actual facts of the case. And when you could put the Joseph Conrad text against the journalistic, so-called non-fictional cases, the reportage, you see there's something to be said for this. Conrad was a rather remarkable man. He was born in Poland. He joined the French Merchant Marine. As a little over 20 years old, he got to Britain. By the time he was about 27 or 28, in '86, he got his captain's license for boats and became a British citizen and a merchant mariner. He actually did command a boat to the Congo River in 1889. Now he's a person who's full of contradictions, and it's sort of the whole lecture is about the contradictions of this enterprise and of the European view of it. So on the one hand, Conrad thought that liberty could only be found under the British flag. At the same time, you get the irony early on in reading the Conrad, when Marlowe is talking to his aunt, who's saying, we are weaning these ignorant millions from their horrid ways, and he says, Marlowe, I ventured the hint that the company was run for profit. That is to say, empire is less for this than for that. He has Marlowe say, the conquest of the world, which mostly means the taking it away from those who have different complexions or slightly flatter noses than ourselves, is not a pretty thing when you look at it too much. But at the same time, he also has Marlowe say that the British colonists, he also has British colonists are the bearers of the spark of the sacred fire. He denounced greed, but he owned South African gold stock. All that said, this text that you have before you is really one of the most important statements